We now return to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project, the radio show discussing honest truth about Illinois policy and politics. Here's AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan Proft back with Pat Hughes on this edition of Rising. And should Governor Rauner beware the Ives of March? We're going to see. I think there's still a long way to go in that race. Obviously, you've got a steep uphill climb when you're facing an incumbent governor with $100 million of branding behind him over the last 3 years and $50 million in the bank to continue doing that, as he has this week, taking out after Jeanne Ives with his rather preposterous Jeanne Ives as Madigan's favorite Republican ad. I mean, this is the kind of Sally OneNote that Team Rauner always uses. Everybody who's not with them is a shill for Mike Madigan.
A noun, a verb, and Mike Madigan.
Yeah,
that's what it is. That's what
really
everything is. That's what everything is.
It's rather tiresome and pathetic, but it speaks to the last 3 years of Governor Rauner's reign, which has been tiresome and pathetic and expensive. And he's also in the mailbox, supporting that ad. So he obviously is concerned about being exposed, and the Republican primary electorate being educated about the particulars of his record. And that started as well with a piece in National Review, cover story in National Review back in December, where National Review and the author of the piece, John Miller, designated Governor Rauner the worst Republican governor in America.
Ouch.
Which is a label he has not been able to shake and will not be able to shake. Yesterday's budget address, or this week's budget address, I should say, frankly, just further solidifies that when he's again saying no income tax increase, and I'm going to work to repeal immediately the 32% income tax increase I presided over, except his budget accounts for the revenue from that tax increase. So it's yet another betrayal. It betrayed social conservatives, betrayed fiscal conservatives, the betrayal of conservatives nearing completion for Governor Rauner.
I think he was surprised anybody read the numbers and figured that out.
Yeah, and he also, of course, has a property tax increase embedded in there with the pension push down, where he mandates responsibility for unfunded liabilities at the local level, local school boards, but doesn't give them the authority to negotiate their own retirement offerings for school district employees and teachers. So that's another problem. The layers of problems continue. So just circling back to that appellation, the worst Republican governor in America, we're pleased to be joined by the author of the piece that laid out the case. He is John Miller. He's the director of the Dow Journalism program at Hillsdale College and a writer for National Review. John, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So the impetus to pen the piece that you did for National Review, the cover story, in December, and how you think that comports with the ongoing reality of Governor Rauner in Illinois.
So we wanted to do a profile of Governor Rauner for quite a while, in fact, and we're keeping eyes on his administration, seeing how he's doing, because when he was elected, there was so much hope that he might be able to, not transform Illinois, but maybe get Illinois to confront some of its very real pension problems and budget problems and so forth, and finally force a reckoning that the state needs to have, and so on. And it just didn't happen. It didn't happen. Then last summer there was the tax hike. I mean, not there was no cutting of taxes. There was no cutting of property taxes as he had promised to do. It was actually a tax hike. There was the Chicago schools bailout, and then finally, when he signed the amnesty bill, and then also the abortion funding bill, we thought, well, we've really got to take a hard look at who he is and what he's doing, and with an eye toward, do people in the state of Illinois, do conservatives, Republicans in the state of Illinois, do they want 4 more years of this?
And John, how do you see, obviously reading your piece, which is an excellent piece, we see sort of how you feel about how Rauner has performed and the failures and the disappointments, as you've just alluded to. How do you see Jeanne Ives as a response to those failed policies? You know, she's got about 30 days left to to sell the deal to the voters in the Republican primary. How do you see her as a response to Governor Rauner?
So one of the first things you got to ask is if you're thinking about an incumbent and wondering should this person be renominated, it doesn't matter what party you belong to. First you got to ask is, well, what's the alternative? Who else might go up and do this? And she came forward, as you know, last fall and presented herself as a possible candidate. And I immediately started looking into her background, interviewed her. Impressive woman who mother of 5, went to West Point, got involved in politics, first at the local level, then was elected to Springfield. And I had a couple of conversations with her, and she's smart. She will talk your ear off about Illinois' budget problems, right? I mean, there's an earnestness there. There's an attention to detail. She is at heart a kind of policy wonk. And so she struck me as a serious candidate. I mean, there's not a flight of fancy for her. This is not she's not driven by vanity, nothing like that. She's a serious candidate. Can she beat him? I don't know, but she struck me as a very serious person who does present to Republican primary voters an alternative to the governor, and there are some stark differences that Republicans are gonna want to look at.
One of the stark differences that Ives is highlighting right now is the respective positions on sanctuary state. I mean, again, sort of incredibly, Governor Rauner, like Governor Jerry Brown, makes Illinois a sanctuary state, legislation that was supported by only 6 of 73 legislative Republicans. Ives is making an issue of that. She's got commercials running with members of victims' families saying, this is basically disqualifying. I lost my brother to somebody who killed him. He was drunk. He killed him, and then he bonds out and he flees to Mexico. Another family, another husband, talking about losing his wife the same way down in central Illinois. And sort of an issue that is being debated here that is, of course, part of the larger conversation about immigration reform and taking on sanctuary cities and sanctuary states nationally. And I wonder if, what kind of resonance you think that might have in terms of how this turns out being a local indicator for national discussion on immigration policy.
Quite a lot. The thing that really struck me in reporting on the situation in Illinois is some polling evidence that asked Republicans, what do you think about Rauner's betrayal on the pro-life issue? He had promised not to sign a piece of an abortion funding bill like he did. He explicitly promised not to do that. Promised the Archbishop of Chicago that he wouldn't do it, and then he went ahead and did it. And the polls showed that they were very upset about this, concerning to them. I mean, this is the Republican Party is a big tent in a lot of ways, but operationally it's a pro-life party. And so they're very upset about that. But the polls showed they were even more upset over the amnesty state legislation. And that really stood out to me, because when I've looked at in my career in political journalism, looking at times when there have been splits in the Republican Party where there's been an incumbent and a challenger and a primary, it usually requires some pro-life energy on the challenger's side. In other words, if the incumbent is pro-life in this kind of a matchup, that often makes the renomination safe. If the incumbent's not pro-life, there's been a betrayal like the one that we've just seen with Governor Rauner, that and the challenger is pro-life, then you see that's the dynamic that a challenger really needs in order to win in this kind of environment. So that was interesting, but I saw the passions were even a little bit higher according to the polling I saw on the amnesty legislation. So that struck me, and we will see what happens.
John, the governor, there was a recent poll that was just released, and this is sort of the result of your commentary and National Review and things that others have said, where he has 26% approval. 26%. I mean, the president in Illinois has, I think it's 37%. Rauner has 26%. And in a Republican primary, he has only 49% approval. In your experience, that seems like a dead man walking to me. In your experience writing about these things, seeing them, what's your view of poll numbers like that?
Those are bad numbers. I'm not sure I'd want to be holding those cards. But there is a tremendous advantage with incumbency, and he has a lot of money. And I think we have to view Jeanne Ives as an underdog. I don't know if she can do it. I think she's got a shot, but I think a lot of people will be making up their minds in the next few weeks. I think increasingly people will focus their attention on this. I don't know that I'd bet on Jeanne Ives, but I certainly wouldn't bet against her.
He is John Miller, director of the Dow Journalism Program at Hillsdale College and a writer for National Review. He penned the piece, the cover story piece, Rauner, Worst Republican Governor in America. John, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.